right, Molo Sambonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Just don't mind the noise in the background, please. There's some construction happening. With that being said, this is Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. My name is Sihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. I want to take a quick moment also just to recognize one of my viewers, a fan of the show. Annie, I did see your message around your personal circumstances, having been diagnosed with cancer, and we just want to wish you well here on the Big Daddy Liberty show. And as the Afrikaners say, voorspoed, and really we wish you refuah shlema, as we would say in Hebrew, definitely in our prayers. Now, with that being said, this is Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. Remember, we start your news day, but how about you join our friends over at the Daily Friend, who from Monday to Thursday at 1:30 p.m. they come to you live and they help you round off your news day. That's the dailyfriend.co.za. Speaking about websites, how about you visit us here at the Big Daddy Liberty Show on our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge some support. 100 Rand a month, guys, helps us fund the editors and the writers that we now have. Will help us create a broader content offering here on the show, especially as we're looking to also start a podcast feature. So you'll find me on all your favorite podcast channels, definitely by the end of this week. Look forward to that. With that being said, enough of the jibber jabber. Let's get straight into the news. Right, things are clearly descending into chaos over in Ekurhuleni, that's in Mpumalanga, indeed specifically the community of Vosman in that part of the world where violent rioting and looting has started taking place. Allegedly, residents in the area are rather fed up with the local municipality. I want to play a quick visual, of a local mall in the area going up in flames.
Pick and Pay complex on fire. Zakara much. Zakara is numbered. Zakara. Manahleli municipality nenkani yayo. Asabona kuphelela phi. Yeah, stakeholder getting affected. Zakala. Shubile zakala. Pick and Pay empty bathetha abantu.
Now, I want to give some further context into perhaps what's happening here, where unfortunately life has now been lost. A News 24 live feed basically writing it up as follows. A 50-year-old woman was shot dead when residents of Vosman near Ekurhuleni, Mpumalanga, took to the streets on Monday and embarked on a violent protest over what is electricity outages. 2 other people were injured. Some stores were torched while others were looted. The Brigadier Selvi Mokhala, who's the spokesperson for police in that part of the world, said, of course, that they're investigating allegations that police may have been the actual shooters in that, end of quote. Now, again, this speaks to something we've been mentioning for a very long time here. As the economy becomes poorer, as service delivery in municipalities across the country continues to become almost non-existent, the anger from mostly poor individuals is going to blow up in forms like these, where the public rioting, public violence, and indeed looting. And if there's one thing we know that we saw in the July riots in particular, is that police are woefully unable to contend with this sort of public violence. South Africans, be very, very aware of the fact that as this public anger builds, if you will, and of course the public violence builds, when it does pop off in your area, you will be very much on your own. Oh, goodness me. South Africa is like living in a movie. In a mini-series, a series, if you will. South Africa, Breaking Bad. What am I talking about? We stay in Mpumalanga, where, believe it or not, driving school instructors, owners of driving school businesses in the Mbombela area of Mpumalanga went on a protest. Now, what do you think they went on a protest on? Was it a protest to demand more law enforcement, or demand indeed that roads were safer so that they could conduct their businesses better? No. This protest was for, or rather, this protest was against the traffic officials who had raised the price of the bribes that they pay from 1,700 Rand to 2,000 Rand. The businesses who teach people how to drive were up in arms that the bribes had been raised. Now, I've got this piece, of course, in The Independent. Let me quickly read the write-up where describing this particular protest as follows. Now, the protest at the Mbombela local municipality offices in Mbombela on Friday saw the school owners, that's the driving school owners, preventing workers from entering the premises. Now, community members were shocked that the protest was not against the bribes traffic officers were demanding to produce favorable results for driving school students, but against the increment of the bribery fees. Now, a resident or motorist is quoted as saying, "Isn't it shocking that the bribery of traffic officials has become legal? The protesters themselves are guilty of a crime. They and corrupt traffic officials belong behind bars," said this motorist, end of quote. And that individual is absolutely correct. It comes back to what I've always been describing as the real divide in this country. It isn't a divide between the races or whatever the politicians would have us believe, but actually it's a divide between the political elites and politicians versus us, the sane, sober, moral, prudent, law-abiding individuals. I often characterize us as the faith, flag, family, and freedom type South Africans who look at the political elites, who will include, by the way, some government officials who are within those circles of the political elite, who live a life and a lifestyle which is just so different to the rest of us, where rules and laws clearly don't apply to them. You have a situation here where driving school owners are actually protesting because the bribes they pay are now going to increase by effectively, 300 Rand? Boo-hoo! They really do deserve to be behind bars. I've always said this and I've said once. If South Africa is to endure, if we're to fix this country, then law and order needs to be restored. And that means a lot more people finding themselves behind bars. Okay, I take you to Ekurhuleni now, where, goodness me, things are descending into a rather messy, keyword, chaos in that part of the world. Now, you remember the politics itself in that part of the world is rather messy, with that coalition government that was initially led by the DA's Tanya Campbell. Remember, she's now been ousted by a coalition of political parties led by the ANC and effectively the EFF. Now, those two parties now in council, fighting it out bitterly between themselves, that's the ANC and the EFF, as to who they want to replace as the councillor after, as I'd mentioned, that motion of no confidence into the DA's Tanya Campbell, leaving, of course, Ekurhuleni effectively hung, in a sense, as a council with no real leadership in that part of the world. That situation definitely playing itself out now insofar as service delivery or the lack thereof. Rubbish heaps are piling up across the city, indeed maybe even posing a public health risk at the stage, with some residents complaining that refuse collection hasn't happened in weeks. Can you imagine how much of a stinky situation that is? I want to read from EWN, which wrote this story up very beautifully because of the crisis that part of the world and residents are facing, citing, of course, that residents say the situation has deteriorated drastically and the city is starting to represent many dumping sites in some areas. Quoting a resident, it says, "Garbage hasn't been collected for the last 2 weeks and it's a mess. And we're now forced to pay 50 Rand for someone to come and clear our garbage," a resident saying. Another quoted as saying, "We haven't had our refuse collected for a period of 2 weeks now." Yet another resident said, "Things are in a mess. Our high density areas like townhouses are flooding with waste. It's full of flies and rodents are visible." Now, you've got to understand, this is a very, very dangerous situation developing here. And to be brutally honest, what most people think is a mere inconvenience, and maybe politicians think that way, given that they're more preoccupied with fighting over seats and power, is actually a massive public health risk. Children are playing, amongst rubbish heaps, perhaps exposed to rodents and other pestilence that can cause disease. It's time for residents in that part of the world to be rather more vocal in how they protest the absolute collapse of services in that area. And those protests have to now, especially, and this is a message to all South Africans, our protests in this country have to stop destroying our own infrastructure, but rather protest and protest action be directed to the political elites and the politicians who mess things up. All right, that's it for today's episode of Vuka Nazo, folks. This is the Wednesday edition of the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, we come to you weekdays from 7 a.m. Guys, you don't have to be up at 7 to watch. The show's available the whole day, but we do put it up from 7 a.m. Let me know about whether you like those times. Maybe we could do it a bit later at 8. I don't know. Up to you. We always welcome the feedback. Where, of course, can you leave that feedback? Of course, on our website at BigDaddyLiberty.com. There, of course, you can get in touch with us, find all our latest episodes, and of course, drop some support, please. Hey man, 100 Rand a month goes a long way to supporting this channel. With that being said, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow only on Vuka Nazo.